Good morning to you. Mark Sept with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. Sunday, September 20th, 2020. And we got a lot to talk about. The tropics remaining busy. I am back in Houston, Texas, getting ready to head out to set up camera systems in the anticipation of Tropical Storm Beta. Will bring some impacts to the Texas coast, but there's good news related to that. It's not always bad news around here. We do have some good news to report in regards to what's happening with Beta. We'll also take a look at Teddy and the expected impacts for Atlantic Canada, the Canadian Maritimes, that vicinity, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and a tiny little system that's kind of sneaking in, not necessarily under the radar, because that's not true. It's very much detected by radar, but you get the idea. It's just a metaphor or a phrase or whatever, and we'll look at that too. So first of all, the map from the National Hurricane Center, plenty of activity. Wilfred is still there, believe it or not, just barely hanging on. And then we do have Teddy. This right here is the remnants of Paulette, and it might try to develop again. We'll have to see. It's kind of running out of time. There's Wilfred, of course. Here's Teddy, still cruising along at 105 miles per hour. It will bring some glancing impacts to Bermuda, but nothing like what you had to deal with Paulette. And then we have this little system here that tried to develop from a little bit of the DNA energy from Sally and a little bit of the DNA and energy, or whatever you want to call it. It's not really DNA, that's just what I'm saying. I don't want you to get confused. But a little bit of the energy or vorticity from the cold front that passed offshore of North America, and I'll show you this on satellite in a minute. And then, of course, we have Beta in the Gulf of Mexico, which is already causing minor flooding issues, and we'll take a look at all of these very closely here as we go forward. First, real quick, let's look at Teddy, and this is expected to move up towards Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, and it's going to bring tropical storm conditions, 35 knots, maybe higher, and pretty large waves coming out ahead of it. Some of those waves are already impacting a good deal of the eastern-facing shorelines of a good part of North America, large swells. I mean, that includes the leewards, the Greater Antilles, Bahamas, the Bermuda area, and of course those swells will be making their way up to Atlantic Canada in the coming days as Teddy crosses over land up there, probably eastern side of Nova Scotia and then across Newfoundland. And it's going to be a big windstorm with some heavy rain. It transitions from purely tropical. We have this very warm core and lots of humidity, and everything's focused. As it moves up and kind of skirts this way, it'll become larger, kind of unwound, and not as concentrated near the center. You guys have been through this before. You generally know what I'm talking about. But it will bring impacts. There could be some power outages, trees down, that kind of thing. But water temperatures up this way, of course, are pretty cold south of the region where this will be crossing. And so, you know, it just is not able to retain that solid warm core, which is a good thing. That way you don't get blasted by true solid hurricanes. But, you know, it's gonna bring some problems up there. So again, if you're in the region, would love to hear from you as to exactly what happens when this comes through. Wilfred out here somewhere, more energy coming off Africa that we'll watch, but nothing imminent in the global models. We're entering a period where we're going to get a little bit of a lull, and then we're going to pick it up again in October, I assure you. Here's the system right here that we got to watch. Just a little bit, mainly for some gusty winds and some locally heavy rains. I'll show you that in more detail in a moment. And then, of course, here is Beta in the Gulf of Mexico, already causing a few minor issues, and we'll take a look at all of these areas one at a time. So here's the system off the coast of Florida. You can clearly see in this visible satellite loop here from weathernerds.org, there's a low-level swirl right there, centered just north of Lake Okeechobee. This moved onshore last night, part of this overall frontal boundary, the energy out here. Pretty much anything with any organized vorticity or spin that's already there is trying to develop in this pattern. We've seen that. That's why we've had so many named storms. A lot of these storms have been weak on the wind side and not very low pressure and fairly short-lived. And so the accumulated cyclone energy has been fairly low overall. We've had a lot of named storms, and we've had some really big impacts. Isaias, Hannah before that, of course, then Laura, major impacts for southwest Louisiana, and a good deal of the deep south there as it moved through. Most recently here, Sally, and we're seeing major impacts continue from that. And then we're going to have some impacts here from Tropical Storm Beta. And what we're lacking, though, are any very long track, from the west coast of Africa all the way across the Atlantic, with the exception of Teddy, and to some extent Paulette, major hurricanes that get to Category 4 for several days. And that's good. Nobody's complaining about that. But I'm just acknowledging, yes, we've had a lot of named storms. The Atlantic Basin has been so favorable that any small area of vorticity has tried to develop, it seems. And because we have such good satellites, they are so well versed at detecting these things, it's easy to spot them. So this is not what you need to be concerned with necessarily. It's this disorganized area of thunderstorms that have been left behind, and these may try to get on shore. There's even a cluster of storms here, not much lightning, right where Interstate 95 and Interstate 4 meet, not far from Daytona Beach. But any boating interest out here, pretty stiff northeast winds, and you can see those winds just by the cloud tracers, really. Onshore flow, some of these storms could produce gusty winds. There's obviously some lightning. That's what those speckles are. So if you have boating interest out there, and why wouldn't you? Because it's really nice. Water temperatures in the low 80s. Sounds good to me. I love summer. Winter's nice when you get big snowstorms, but otherwise, just pass. But just be careful out there. Be mindful that this little system is out there. And the Weather Prediction Center, of course, keeping their eyes on it. Localized flooding possible with efficient rain producing storms today. That low-level flow coming in, and you can see here from the east and northeast, some of these storms may come onshore. There's the little low-pressure area along that frontal boundary. So just something to watch. And I suggest, if you like this kind of stuff, follow the Weather Prediction Center on Twitter. Very easy to do. And you can go in when you see these little things pop up. You can click on them, and you can read all about it. A couple paragraphs there. So, it's just good information, and it's from a reliable source. All right? So moving on along in the Gulf of Mexico, we do have Beta, Tropical Storm Beta. A couple things to note with it. First of all, let me speed this loop up. A couple things to note. We'll stop it here on the last frame. Ta-da! So you got this band way out here, hundreds of miles away from the center, which is over here. And this is rotating around, and it'll bring periods of heavy rain all the way over to the central Gulf Coast. So southeast Louisiana, parts of Mississippi and Alabama, you could see periods of heavy rain today, well removed from the center of fairly disorganized Beta over here. Now, Beta is trying to produce some deep convection. There's quite a bit of dry air around. You can tell because of the lack of deep convection all over here. Dry air is being entrained off of the continent, off of Texas, and that's limiting the deep thunderstorm activity. There's also that frontal boundary in the area, so there are some strong winds moving this way, helping to remove the convection from the center of circulation. But that doesn't mean that Beta is without impact. As I just pointed out, look at all the lightning, too, in here, and mostly for the offshore oil interests, but this band might try to rotate its way as it kind of gets sheared off, pulled away from the low-level center here. It might make its way up to the central Gulf Coast, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. So just keep that in mind, people going through the repairs, etc., especially in Alabama and points east over here. Maybe you get some rainfall out of this that could hamper the relief efforts and the recovery efforts in the wake of Category 2 Hurricane Sally. Now, key messages here, even though, and there is good news here, The rainfall, well, the power just flickered here. That was odd. Even though the rainfall amounts have come down, and we'll look at that graphic in a moment, there's still going to be periods of heavy rain. There's going to be localized flash flooding, meaning that it happens fairly quickly. Urban flooding, you think about the big giant Houston area, and some river flooding. But it's not looking as dire as it did yesterday, owed to the fact that there's more dry air involved than the models were previously indicating, and it looks like this is going to move quicker and then kind of get out of the picture faster. So that's good. Still, we're going to have the possibility of some storm surge that's already going on because of the constant onshore flow, and especially near the times of high tide. And this will go on through Tuesday. So we have all day Sunday, all day Monday, and probably all day Tuesday. There have been some evacuations recommended, mainly for people to get their cars out of the way and other sensitive assets. But all things considered, this is not going to be a major impact event, but I don't want to downplay it that nothing's going to happen, because there will be problems. There's going to be some saltwater flooding, some heavy rain, just not the very, very, it wasn't looking horrible yesterday, but it's looking a lot better today. Let's put it that way. I want to zoom in on the rainfall and just kind of show you here. So Houston sits right over here, of course, the greater Houston area, and it's within the 6 to 10 inch range, possibly. Maybe heavier rain south of there. You never know where this sets up. And things can change. You get one of those training bands of rain that sets up right over you, that, and like a train going over the tracks. It's impossible to know where those set up. So you could get 4 to 6 inches of rain in a fairly short amount of time. The bayou systems in and around Houston, part of the flood control measures, those can fill up pretty quickly, and you can get some flooding. You know about this. So just keep that in mind, but don't get too anxiety-ridden here that this is going to be another Imelda, or certainly not another Harvey. That doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Can't completely say, okay, we're good, but it certainly is better news, what we're seeing today, than what things were looking like yesterday. And we can see this reflected in the modeling here from Tropical Tidbits. I really like how this is presented. The green is your higher humidity and moisture values overall, and the brown represents lower humidity and moisture values overall. And you can see, I'm going to outline it here in this red, some dry air all around. This is all drier air at the 400 to 700 millibar level of the atmosphere. So it's a certain level of the atmosphere. In the mid-levels, drier. In some cases, the relative humidity, and you can see the scale over here, anything that's not green is below 50%. And tropical cyclones really like it when humidity values are above 70%, right about here. And there's just not much of that out in the Gulf of Mexico when the 0Z model here was initialized. This is the 0Z from last night. See, right there, 0Z. So if we just look at this out in time, you see what happens, that the moisture and humidity does try to expand into Texas. So yes, there is going to be the threat of heavier rain, but that dry air stays ever present. Looks like a yin-yang in there, kind of wrapped in. It's not your classic scenario for a tropical storm to be very efficient with either the rain or the deepening where it strengthens. It's just not there, which is good. That's fine. That's a good thing. In fact, I'm sorry, this is the 6Z run. I don't know what fooled me there. It says initialized. I see, I went back too far. Whatever. Okay, it's the 6Z run. And yeah, you do see an increase in moisture. And then especially here tomorrow morning as this gets close to the coast, I think that's when this is going to be at its peak. And we're going to get some good winds, 50, 60 miles per hour driving that storm surge in to the typical prone areas, west end of Galveston, Sargent, Freeport, Surfside Beach, up to maybe Bermuda Beach, the Bolivar Peninsula, and then there will be some heavy rain. But exactly where that sets up, very, very difficult to tell. And then it finally gets inland, the dry air wraps around, and then it just starts to deflate, which is fine. And then, you see the humidity over here, maybe some rain spreading across Florida as it kind of shears off away from Beta. This is about 3 days out or so. And then maybe it gets back over the Gulf. Yeah, we'll worry about that later. You see more moisture returning from the deep Caribbean, but nothing to worry about tropically. That's coming in October. Nothing to worry about necessarily, but we're going to get a break, I promise. And then we're going to have to watch the Caribbean when we get into what I call the second season. So just to give you an idea, again, even from Alabama, Florida, all along Louisiana, down to at least Corpus Christi, maybe farther south, but not so much. You're going to have impacts. Onshore flow coming in with Beta, depending on the wind trajectory. That'll pile up the water a little bit, 1 to 3 feet, maybe 2 to 4 feet in some of these areas down here right along the coast. As for Houston Metro, not as worried, but your typical areas, I mean, I know some of these areas myself. Buffalo Bayou, Maid Creek out here in the Katy area. Like at Greenhouse Road, it empties into Addicks Reservoir. That could come out of its banks. You never know. It's just all dependent on where these bands set up. And then again, any onshore flow in here that would push water on these western sides of the bay. You got to just use common sense, basically. Be careful out there. Move your vehicles, especially if you're down here along the beach and you got property right along the coast. Get those vehicles out of there. You don't want saltwater intrusion into your vehicles. Don't drive through that stuff going sightseeing. I'm going to set up some cameras today. It's part of my job. It's what I do. I study these systems. I don't care how strong or weak they are. It's part of the job. And we'll see what they look like through my cameras. There's other cameras. I'm not the only one. I mean, come on. But I'll give you a point of view that you'll see. Don't drive your vehicles through there. I'm certainly not going to do that. But overall, again, the emphasis here, things are looking much better. To view the cameras, we have a project, the Hurricane Landfall Project, and it's all funded through our Patreon, the $10 level and up. You get the access to all of the live cameras and more, and it's through patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. It's very easy to find. The link is in the description of the video. Our dashboard, none of the cameras are active right now. These are some left over from the labeling from Sally. But I'll probably put 4 cameras out for this one, something like that. And then we have the radar that we'll embed, and we'll switch this over to Houston. Here's our chat. And this is all the stuff that you get access to, including our really, really cool, sophisticated tracking map. It's great for tracking the storms. It's zoomable, and you can change the overall background layer and the look of everything to a street map if you want to. And you can see where the systems are supposed to go, and you can really zoom in. It's very nice. But you can also, the really, really cool feature of this is you can activate our cameras. We do have several that are permanent. For example, Rodanthe along the North Carolina Outer Banks. It's got what I call schmutz, SCHMUTZ, some schmutz on the lens. This is that salt. Ugh, it's very frustrating. It needs to rain. Bad example of the cameras. But yeah, we do have the cameras. We got one out in Nevada, and it's nice and dry. Look at that bird. Perfect timing. A little bit of smoke in the sky out here. Got a couple of them down in the Virgin Islands, thanks to Brent and Timothy that host these cameras. There is nothing like what we're doing in anywhere for hurricanes, other severe weather. Come on, St. John's, don't let me down. It's probably my local internet here at the hotel, to be honest with you. Sometimes it's not reliable. There you go. Look at that. Virgin Islands live shot there from Timothy's place. But I put these out. And my team and I, we do this. And I'm going to be putting these out over in Texas. And you can tune in. There'll be little camera icons down here along the way that we put these. Probably put one up in Katy to monitor South Maid Creek. But that's how you get involved. That's how you're able to take advantage. It's through Patreon, just to let you know. And that's how we fund the project. And you can get involved. It's not a subscription necessarily. It's not like you buy something from me. It's more of a co-op. So, and we're trying to build this for the long term. We have a over 850 members right now, plus our HurricaneTrack Insider supporters that have been around for some of them more than 15 years. And that's how we do it. It's crowd-based, crowd-funded, and you are the crowd. And so if you can get involved, that's how you do it. All right? All right, well, let me shut up and get this online and then get out of here. We'll have the vehicle cam running on our public Ustream feed. Ustream. That was a long time ago. They were bought by IBM. YouTube. Sorry. I've been traveling too much. We do make the vehicle cam available at no cost, no monetization, no ads, no commercials on YouTube. And yes, we will have that running, and you'll be able to tune in and watch that. All right. So, and I'll work all day today with Mike to set out these cameras, probably Freeport, Surfside, and then up in the Katy area, and maybe over at Seabrook. We'll see. All right. All right. Well, we'll talk to you again from the road once we're out and about. Thanks as always for tuning in. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll see you from Southeast Texas in just a little while.